Y'all planning for this?
Have you ever fired an employee and thought to yourself later, man, I shouldn't have done that? No, you have not. Just like when we graduated, very difficult client, we've never gone back later and said, man, I should have just kept working with them. It would have eased itself up and it would have been an okay situation. By the time that you as a financial advisor are ready to let go one of your staff members, it has probably been agony on you keeping them in place for longer than they needed to be. Firing someone is the single most difficult task that we ask any leader to do. And we're constantly dragging our feet because it is so daunting. But in this episode, we're going to talk about what is the right way to terminate somebody that you know shouldn't be on your staff and why we struggle with this head trash about letting people go for far longer than what we need to. So rule number one, if you know you have to graduate someone, fire them, terminate them, lay them off, get them gone, reduce their hours, whatever little pretty package you want to wrap this into, then you got to get it done. You need to set a deadline right now because you have probably been debating getting rid of this person for a very long time. And if you're like most financial advisors that come to me and ask how to do this appropriately, it's probably super awkward because that person is a long time standing family friend. You've inherited their relationship or employment relationship from another advisor whose practice you took over, or my favorite one of all, they're related to you in some way, shape, or form. And you are terrified to let them go because you are their single support system. But I'm telling you right now that if you are keeping somebody who you want to terminate, you are not doing them any justice and you're not doing yourself any justice and you're failing your clients in the process. This is a lose situation. So when it's time to let somebody go, don't drag your feet about doing it. Set a date on the calendar. All right, I'm going to let this person go by this date, this time. Normally, when I let somebody go, my process is I choose a date on the calendar. It's generally a Friday. That way they have the weekend to kind of, get through their emotions, etc. When I terminate somebody's employment, they don't come back in my office. So on Friday, right before I have an HR meeting with them, I always try to have a third party present with me in the room because we have an enterprise office. This might not be easy for everyone. If you're a single practitioner, you just have one person. Then make sure that when you're letting someone go, it needs to be in person. This isn't Zoom. This isn't telephone. This is an in-person meeting. Why? Because you need to show respect for yourself, respect for them about to lose their job. And you need to also facilitate communication. You need to have great dialogue about this, right? But this should not take forever to get accomplished. And most of the time, once you get through terminating someone's employment, who has been doing mediocre to lousy in their job, you're going to find that years later when you talk to them, it was the best thing that you ever did for them because now you've allowed them to go live their real passion, to find their real truth. That wasn't with you because you're getting C-level from them and you're bringing your A game every single day. So I pick a date on the calendar. It's normally a Friday. By the time that I have decided to terminate someone, before we go into our meeting with HR, I have gone ahead and made sure I've restricted all of their access to all programs. I keep a master log sheet of who has access to what, because not all firing, termination, laying off, etc. goes smashingly well. So once I've gone ahead and let somebody go, they can't access any client confidential information anymore. It just needs to end right then and there, right? We don't need a prolonged situation. So I've picked that. Then I also mentioned that I have an HR person. If you don't have an HR person, most people don't unless you're in a large enterprise, then you can decide to do one of two things. One, you're going to have the meeting one-on-one together. In that case, if you're in an enterprise office, you'll have a closed door, bring it up to a conference room, some neutral space. If you are a solo advisor, consider keeping the door open during that consultation with them, that meeting with them. And it really shouldn't come to a surprise when you ask to have this meeting with them and you're going to let them go. Because if they've been mediocre or lousy at their job, they know it too. And they know that they're not happy also. This should not take forever. This should not be something that you spend 2, 3, or 4 hours doing. Personal responsibility lies squarely on the individual. And you have to remember that, right? So if we've gotten into this, bad cultural habits of needing to talk about your feelings for 2 or or 3 hours, this isn't appropriate. This isn't going to help them, and it's not going to help you. This should be short and sweet. So we need to make sure that we've led them into a private environment, and lead with the punchline. Don't bury it. Don't go, hey, I just wanted to talk to you. How do you think things at work are going? Because now you're putting them in a very awkward position, and they're going to start telling you things that might get you in trouble when you do decide to let them go. So if you're going to be terminating someone's employment, don't bury the lead. Show them the respect of starting right off with it. One way to be is like, hey, I've been, really thinking about our relationship together, and I respect you too much to keep you working here. I feel that you're really unhappy. Your work performance has been staggering, and I can't stand to see you this way any longer. I think you'd be best suited somewhere else. And so here's what we're going to do. And then here's the third step that I take. I always offer some type of severance unless I'm terminating someone for violating an employment agreement between us, right? So this is a happy send off. Yes, they're losing their job, but don't all endings have to end bad, right? So normally, if I'm terminating someone that's just kind of mediocre in their performance, and I know isn't a good fit for me ultimately long term, especially to help me achieve my future goals, I'll offer them a severance of 1, 2 weeks, or 30 days. If I have a longtime employee that has been really important to me, or a family member that has been really important to my family dynamics, then I want to make sure that I'm offering them a generous severance. And so I might say to them, I'm going to make sure that you have, your regular paycheck for the next 6 weeks in order for you to find some footing. Now, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, there's middle ground somewhere. You got to evaluate your own personal situation and say, okay, if I'm going to terminate this person's employment, what is a realistic time for them to get on their feet? And yeah, you're paying them to not be there, right? That's severance. But also, it's also peace of mind that you're, consciously doing the right thing. You're not making sure, you're making sure that they are not going to be tight on finances all, forever. And they have time and breathing room to find other occupation, other employment. And so I like to offer that because it's a good win-win for both of us, is that I'm not just cutting them off cold turkey, but instead I'm cushioning it so that they have a little bit of time to find other work elsewhere. If you are an enterprise office and you are using a human resource and HR department, do not make them do your dirty work. Do not get up and leave the room just because you are uncomfortable in the situation. Don't walk in and say, hey, this isn't working. We're going to go ahead and let you go. And Susie, HR person, is going to walk you through all of those awkward conversational logistical steps. It's inappropriate. You're the leader of the company. You're the financial advisor. You're making the decision. You stay in the room and you answer the questions that need to be answered. And then you wrap it up. Again, don't drag your feet. Don't bury the lead. Don't let this take 2 or 3 hours. This needs to be a 20-minute conversation so that it's not painstaking for you. And then also not horrible for them to have to sit there and endure and argue about all the ways that they have failed in their job performance, right? This needs to be short and sweet. And the longer you take, the more you open yourself up to vulnerability of making a misstep, right? Because you're either going to get super compassionate and you're going to find a way to problem solve and keep them in a different role or put them in a different position or, XYZ, right? We're financial advisors. I'm a financial planner. I'm going to plan. I'm going to problem solve. And if the problem lingers on the table for forever, I'm going to start rapid fire solutions left and right. So this can't take that long. I've got to be able to maneuver in and out and make sure the deed is done. I've taken responsibility and I have liberated that person from doing a mediocre level work to go find their true passion, their true truth, and their energy to put somewhere else. And I think that's really, really important. Not all endings have to end bad. Keep remembering that. Then also, you got to show compassion, right? So I don't come in there as direct as I normally am. I normally sit down. I show my body language has vulnerability. My palms are facing upward. My shoulders are down. I'm not in my warrior position if I was contract negotiating something else. And instead, I want to have just a conversation about the fact that they need to find something more fulfilling, because if they were truly fulfilled, they would be happier in their role here. And that's just not happening. And so I might give a couple suggestions of things that they need to go and do, but I'm not going to problem solve forever. I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to consider their family. I'm going to offer a generous severance. And yes, in the background, I'm also cutting them off from all things that they had client access to, right? That's a security protocol for me. Really, really important. I don't want anything lingering out there, right? Especially if I'm letting go on a Friday. And if your conversation doesn't go smashingly, I don't want them jumping in the CRM and emailing all of my clients that they were terminated and that they really enjoyed their time, but they got fired for no reason, right? These kind of horror stories exist all over the world. So make sure that you're being calculating and compassionate at the same time to make sure it's all a good send off, all right? And finally, the last step that I'm going to tell you on is you got to talk to your team. Okay. So my parents used to joke and said, nothing improves morale like firing someone, right? And the reason that this is so funny and true in so many different ways is because, one, if you have somebody that you know has to go, then you or the leader have done a disservice to the rest of your organization, because they're probably just as unhappy with that person in there, right? This is the negative Nelly. This is the person that is inept. This is the person that habitually makes mistakes. This is the person that says, this isn't my job, or always ask for time off. This is the person that is dragging you and your team further and further away from world domination. This is the person that they have been secretly complaining to their spouses and friends that they wish wasn't at the practice any longer. So you need a rally for your team. Talk to them about why you let them go, but don't divulge any details, right? So I make this short and sweet. I bring my whole team together and I say, hey guys, over the last couple of months, we've really noticed a shift in morale. There've been a lot of, inadequacies and people operating at levels that we consider inconsistent with our cultural values. So-and-so isn't going to be working with us any longer. They're going to go forward and we wish them the best, blah, blah, blah. And then I send them off. So I go forward as the leader and I nip it in the bud. Now, I don't want all the gossip to be happening behind the scenes. Is that going to still happen in enterprise office? Sure, we're all people, right? And even after I have my team meeting, I'll have one or two that are super close to me come up and say what really happened, right? But of course, I'm not going to divulge any of that. I'm just going to say, hey, it wasn't a good fit. And we're all about square pegs and square holes. And if I was trying to force a square peg in a round hole, that's on my responsibility as a leader to acknowledge it and make sure I remedied it for the rest of the team. And then now what I'll also do finally with my team is I'm going to set up a good focus message. Okay, guys, now that we have problem solved this, here's how we're going to handle that. And so I've given them the mental stamina of being busy. I've developed a way for them to not feel a void of, oh my gosh, who's going to make all these outbound phone calls? Who's going to process all this work? Who's all this going to fall on? And I'm going to tell them a little bit of my plan. Yes, I'm hiring for that role. Or you know what? We found that really this role wasn't needed. And instead, what we could do is prioritize by doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to get my team rallied all around that message and that belief. And they will rise to the occasion because they are living their passion. They are living their truth. And yes, of course, they just saw somebody lose their job and they don't want to lose theirs. There's a human truth to that. And it's not me trying to fear set. It's just who we are as people. You can always tell when somebody gets fired at an institution because all of a sudden you see people on their A game. I wish it was not always true. It just tends to be. But those are my best tips for letting someone go, mutually respecting them, making sure that you're keeping it short and sweet, which means don't bury the lead. Don't sit down and have a 30-minute conversation about their sick kid at home and how their husband's trying to find work. And then you're just going to be sitting there the whole time being like, wow, I really shouldn't be doing this right now, And so make sure you come forward, be direct in the conversation, be compassionate about it, liberate that person to go find their truth. And then be generous. Yes, you might have to cut a check for severance pay for somebody doing employment that they're no longer working for you. But at the end of the day, that's a courtesy. That helps them financially. It helps you stay on solid ground knowing that you made the right decision. Make sure you have a third party if you're in a larger enterprise. If you're in a smaller solo practitioner, make sure you're doing this in person. Don't expect somebody else to do the dirty work. Keep the door open. Have this conversation. Focus on the future. And then, of course, always, always talk to your team about the transition that you're making and help them problem solve, because somebody's always going to be thinking, great, now I have to do everything, or we have this void. Are we hiring? Are we placing someone else? All of those little loose end questions, you as the financial advisor, as the leader, need to nip in the bud and make sure the team understands the direction. All right, this has been Jamie for Worlds to Conquer on how to transition someone out of employment.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA.